mine here, okay? And I want to welcome everybody to our first ever Zoom meeting, and hopefully it's going to be a success. You know, we're just doing our best with all this. And I hope everybody is safe and doing okay. And that if you need anything, please reach out to someone, because we've got a lot of members who are really happy to help. And reminder that the Del Mar Community Connections for people who are 65 and up is a great resource. So keep that in mind. It's a wonderful thing. I want to also thank everybody for sending all those pictures, because it's been a delight for me. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is, you know, being able to send those pictures. It's a real treat, and I love seeing everybody else's gardens. If we have additional programs that we can set up in the future, we will let you know. So far, we don't have anything. We're going to see how this works, and send me your feedback on this so that we can, you know, improve if we can, and if you like this or if you don't. We will be probably voting for our slate for next year via internet, because I think it's going to be unlikely that we would be able to meet. And that's the plan at this moment. And that's all I've got from me. And I am now going to unmute Carol and have her introduce our speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank Matthew profusely for agreeing to participate in our first Zoom. He was slated to be our speaker for March. And as you know, we've been quarantined and we were unable to meet as a group. I want to tell you a little bit about Matthew. He's a budding research mycologist and currently works as a microscopy specialist at the La Jolla Institute for Immunology. Very pertinent at this time. In his spare time, he conducts citizen science fungal research and serves as the membership director for the San Diego Mycological Society. He obtained a bachelor's degree at Whitman College in Walla Walla in 2017 and has just been accepted for a PhD program. And you'll have to tell us where, Matthew. He hopes to study fungal chemical ecology with an emphasis on fungal invertebrate interactions. You'll have to tell us about that too, Matthew. Thanks again for coming, and we look forward to hearing all of your information on fungi. Let's all give him a round of applause. Do you know how to do that on? I guess we can't do that by clapping. Let's show them our hands. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen so you can all see what I'm doing. Perfect. To update you, I was accepted to a PhD program, and I also accepted for the Ohio State University in their environmental science graduate program, in case you were all curious. And thank you all for having me today. This is also my very first Zoom lecture, so we'll see how this goes. So bear with me if something goes strange with technical problems. But I wanted to let you all know about fun mushrooms here that you can find in Southern California, and a little bit about the organization I'm a part of, the San Diego Mycological Society. So the San Diego Mycological Society does quite a lot of stuff. We have monthly meetings, we have speakers, we have classes, we go out on forays, we look for mushrooms, we have special dinner and film screenings, and learn how to identify and have professionals that I can identify for you. So we have lectures and speakers once a month, the first Monday of every month, although not during this quarantine time, although I might suggest now that we do change and do some stuff via Zoom, because this is I never even conceived of this possibility. So yeah, we have monthly lecturers that come, and that's completely free. You don't even actually have to be a member of the San Diego Mycological Society to come to our lectures. It's the first Monday of every month in the Casa del Prado, room 101 in Balboa Park, and at 7 p.m. And for the first 30 minutes, or so, if you come at 6:30, there's typically an expert IDer who, if you bring in mushrooms that you found locally, they will be able to show you, identify them for you and tell you what you've found, which is a lot of fun. And then the lectures span from all sorts of things, from more on the social side of things about how mushrooms affect humans, cooking, all the way to very, very scientific sort of stuff. But they usually always make it approachable. Even if it's very scientific, it's put in a way that is easily approachable, as I'm hoping to try to do here in this lecture. So we also have cultivation workshops where you can learn how to grow your own mushrooms. As you can see in some of these pictures, we're putting some pasteurized straw in bags, which with some seeds that have been inoculated with the mycelium of Pleurotus austriatus, which is the technical term for oyster mushrooms. You can sometimes find those in the store. And mycelium, if you don't know that term, is essentially like the root structure of a mushroom, but it's a little more complicated than that, and I can get into that later. As well as, if you can see on the right, there are logs, and the logs everybody's punching holes in to put plugs in, which the logs will then be colonized by the same sort of root structure, then will start to fruit mushrooms. So those ones take longer to produce mushrooms, usually around 6 months to start even producing any mushrooms. But once they do, it's you get a lot of mushrooms and for a lot longer time. So it's a long game, but it's a lot of fun. And we also have cooking workshops. We sometimes teach you. We have a resident chef, and she helps teach you how to cook with mushrooms and all sort of the varieties, as well as dinners that happen, maybe twice or 3 times a year. It depends, but where we have primarily mushroom-based dishes, and it's delicious every time. So this last one was in January or February. Was it January? And it was mostly Asian themed, whereas the previous one was mostly French themed foods, but all primarily mushroom based. We also go on forays, which is one of the most popular things that people really like about our club. The society goes out, and unfortunately, I wish I could tell you how many times we went out, but it's completely dependent upon the weather. If you have a rainy year, like last year, we went on a bunch. We went on a ton of different forays because it produced a lot of mushrooms. But if you all remember the year before last, it was very dry, very, very, very dry. So we had very few forays, unfortunately. And one time we did go out on a foray, and amongst 30 people, we found only 2 mushrooms. That was a very sad foray, I have to admit. But most of the time, we find a ton of stuff, as you can see in these pictures. You might be surprised to learn that there are actually quite a bit of mushrooms here in Southern California, especially if you go a little bit further inland, such as in the, if you all know where sort of Potato Chip Rock, so Mount Woodson, that's a great place, as well as Santa Isabel, near the Native American reservation. Those are great places to go and forage for mushrooms. And I wanted to teach you all about what kind of mushrooms you might actually expect to see here in Southern California, especially even potentially here more coastal. You might find these in your backyard. And we also have annual fungus fair. That happens in February. And this is a great time. I highly recommend you all check it out next year. Totally free, open to everybody. And it's in Balboa Park, or room 101 of Casa del Prado. And we have tons of vendors that sell mushroom related products. We have speakers, we have demonstrations, we have an identification table where you can see all the local mushrooms in the area. We have food. It's a great time. I highly recommend you come and check it out next time or next year. And also, we sometimes do film screenings, such as, I don't know if any of you saw it, but in Encinitas, there was the screening of Fantastic Fungi in La Paloma Theater for a long time. It was only supposed to be a one-night event, but actually there was so much demand that they kept this movie in La Paloma for months. I think it was supposed to be in November, and I remember it still being present up until the time that the stay-at-home order happened. So, I mean, a very long time, which was amazing considering it was only supposed to be a one-night event. But we helped put on that one-night event, and I highly recommend this documentary, by the way. It's called Fantastic Fungi, and it is now available to stream on Vimeo. I can show you all that link later if you're interested. It's a very beautiful film, lots of time-lapse photography, and it kind of is a great introduction to mycology, which is the study of fungi. Myco is the Greek prefix for fungus. And let's see. Now, if you want to learn how to identify mushrooms a little bit more, these are some, or participate in citizen science projects, I highly recommend these in particular, the Mycoflora Project and iNaturalist, both of which contribute to citizen science. It's very easy. So the Mycoflora Project is, it's a global project, but there's also a North American Mycoflora Project, and then a California Mycoflora Project, and then a San Diego Mycoflora Project. They keep on, there are many layers. And in this project, what you do is you take pictures with a location and a time and a date of mushrooms that you find out in the wild, and then you actually preserve those mushroom specimens. You dry them in a food dehydrator or just even out in the sun, and you send a little sample to I believe it's the San Diego Natural History Museum that is doing this, but I will verify that. And they will actually do some genetic barcoding of the various different specimens that they collect, because they want to know the genetic variation of all the various different fungi throughout North America. Because even though two individuals can look very similar from the West Coast to the East Coast, they might be different species, or they might be entirely different subspecies, and we want to know how different they are, and genetics is a great way to do that. iNaturalist, similarly, is even if you don't want to go through all the hassle of sending things in to the Natural History Museum and mailing and drying, you can use this app it's on your phone, just a free app on your phone, and it's great. You take a picture of something, ideally a couple pictures from different angles, and it will try to identify the mushroom for you. It's actually more broad than just mushrooms. It will do it for plants, it will do it for animals, it will do it for algae, it'll do it for all sorts of things. It's a great app. It's like, I don't know if any of you know the app Shazam, which basically you have it listen to and record a song, listen to a song and it'll try to identify it for you. It's basically that, but for nature. It's great. I love it. And it's also a great way to contribute to citizen science, because then it adds to, okay, these kind of organisms are found in this area at this density. And I'm going to show you how to take pictures, how to identify the features of a mushroom, and how to properly collect and handle and save and preserve them. So identifying mushrooms is obviously, it's an art, and I am actually not even an expert, all things considered, when it comes to mushroom identification. We have some amazing experts that are part of the Mycological Society, and I'm just more of an amateur when it comes to IDing. But you can identify a mushroom through a numerous number of features, such as colors, shapes, sizes, textures, smells, taste, environment, and season. So a caveat, taste. Yes, you typically don't want to just eat random mushrooms that you find, but surprisingly, a common way of identifying mushrooms is to first is to take the littlest tiny piece off of a mushroom and just chew it and spit it up. Almost no mushrooms at that level will kill you. There are very few, and also a misconception. There are no mushrooms that will hurt you via just touching them. I think that there is also a misconception that touching mushrooms sometimes can be poisonous. There are none that are transdermally poisonous other than one mushroom that exists in Australia, and it's very easily identifiable. It looks like coral that's growing on, I mean, obviously on land, and it is red and fiery, and it looks like it's fingers. I think it's quite literally called like devil's fingers because it looks like red fingers that are sticking up out of the ground. And if you do touch that, that one is poisonous, but it's only in Australia, so we don't have to worry about it here. But yes, any of these features that I just listed can be clues as to what sort of mushroom it is. And a lot of these features will be used in what's known as keys. I don't know if you all do that with identifying plants at all, but basically you would follow a key where it would say, okay, is the cap of the mushroom concave or convex? Like, is it more of like a cup or is it more of like a bell? And okay, great. Now, if you did that, move on to this step. Okay, is the cap smooth or sorry, is it dry or is it slimy? Okay, it's slimy. Let's move on to this step. And so essentially you follow through and you go through all of these various different sort of colors, shapes, sizes, textures, smells, tastes, and as well as the environment it was found in, what sort of trees were around it, and what season it was found in. And environment also includes obviously area, like Southern California, because you could use the same key for something in New Zealand, because there are parts of New Zealand that have similar climates to here in Southern California, but you're not going to find the same mushrooms, obviously. So now moving on to some mushrooms that you actually might find here in Southern California. It might be in your backyard. There's a good chance you found these ones in your backyard. Chlorophyllum mollibites. I apologize if I butcher the Latin names. I have never taken Latin, but it's known as the false parasol or the green-spored lepiota or the vomiter, because as you may guess, it will make you throw up profusely. Thankfully, will not kill you. It won't kill you, but you're not going to have a good time. I do not recommend eating it. It also does not taste very good. So for any of you who are interested in phylogeny, fungi is the kingdom, which is different. So fungi is a separate kingdom altogether than plants, Plantae, as well as it's a separate kingdom also from Animalia, animals. But fungi and animals are actually much more closely related than fungi and plants. If you're looking at like, I don't know if you all can still see me or if you can just see my screen, but if you're looking at like, if you've ever seen one of those sort of phylogenetic trees connecting like different organisms together and stuff like that, animals and plants are like, animals and fungi are about right here, and plants are way over here. So animals and fungi are very closely related, but plants are really far away. Anyways, and then once you go down from kingdom, you go into phylum, and Basidiomycota is the vast majority of all mushrooms that you will ever see. They're the ones that have the classic shape of the stalk and the bell. And they're what's known as the club fungi, whereas there's also Ascomycota, and those are the other mushroom-forming fungi, and those are the cup fungi. And those are a little bit more funky looking. And I think I do have an example. But most mushrooms you see are in the phylum Basidiomycota. So anyways, going on with this one, with the false parasol, its edibility, as I said before, it's poisonous, but it won't kill you. So rest assured in that. There's almost nothing here, especially in Southern California, that will kill you. There are many things that will make you have a bad time, but very few that will kill you. It's found on lawns, like you might have found in your backyard, or parks, and Eastern North America and California. It's very strange. It doesn't seem to exist mostly in the middle. It's right in the middle of the country, but on the coasts, and also not the Pacific Northwest. And as you can see, you can identify this one through especially its green spore print. So meaning if you take off a cap of a mushroom and you leave it on a piece of paper overnight, it will drop spores. And whatever color and the shape and color of the print is another way to ID mushrooms. And it has this very distinct, dark kind of green spore print. So moving on, we have Ganoderma species. So this isn't just one type of mushroom, there are multiple species of Ganoderma, it's a genus. But they're known as like conchs or shelf mushrooms or bracket fungi. You find these growing on living and dead trees. And they're very hard, they're dense, which is not what you typically think of a mushroom. But if you like knock on it with your fist, it feels like wood, it maybe even denser. And some of them are edible. Many of them are actually used medicinally, used for medicinal purposes. But they don't taste great, I have to admit. So that's why the edibility is varied. It's mostly used for medicinal purposes, and some are poisonous. But again, I don't think, as far as I know, none of them are fatal, or lethal rather. And you can find Ganoderma species everywhere. They are all over the world. And yeah, next time you're going on a forest walk, if you're looking for mushrooms, surprisingly, it's not just at the ground you need to look at. A lot of times it's in the trees, up above. That's where you'll find them. And these are the ones that you probably know the best, Agaricus species. Again, not one individual species, but it's a genus with multiple species within it. These are what's known as the button mushrooms or the field mushrooms. The one mushroom that you find in the store, you know, the white button mushroom, this is an Agaricus species. And I'll let you in on a little secret. The white button mushroom, the cremini mushroom, and the portobello button mushroom that you all find in the store, it's all the same mushroom. It's just picked at different life stages. It's all Agaricus bisporus. The white button is the youngest stage, the cremini is a little older, and the portobello is the full mature mushroom, but it's the same mushroom. So there's very little variety of mushrooms that you actually find in the store in comparison to what mushrooms exist in the world that are edible. And it's a bit of a shame, which is why going on forays can be so amazing. You can, with an expert IDer that can actually tell you what you are getting. There are so many mushrooms out there to try and eat that you just don't have access to in the stores, and oftentimes not even in farmers markets. But anyways, going back to Agaricus species, you'll oftentimes find these on like your lawns, grass, dirt, and sand, and leaves. Most of the ones that you will find outside on your back lawn are probably not going to be edible though. So some of them are edible and some of them are not. A great way as a rule of thumb, but again, not a definitive way, is if you kind of scratch them, if you scratch the mushroom and it bruises yellow, as you can see up above the axanthodermis, you see how it's kind of bruised a little bit yellow. That is more likely meaning that it's poisonous than it's edible. If it bruises red, that's more likely to be edible. Additionally, if you smell it and it smells kind of phenolic, meaning like, you know, paint or like gasoline, you know, something like that, it's not a good smell. If it doesn't smell like the nice earthy mushroom smell, it's probably poisonous as well. And again, a disclaimer, all of these are rules of thumb. None of these are definitive statements. Please do not eat a random mushroom just because it smells mushroomy and it bruises red when you scratch it. So yeah, the edibility is varied of these. Some of these are delicious and some of them taste terrible and are poisonous. So yeah, it's an interesting one. The next one I have is Astraeus hygrometricus. And these are fun. These are what's known as the Earth stars. So, or it's an Earth star, the hygroscopic Earth star, a barometer Earth star, or the false Earth star. Oftentimes I think people overlook these. You find them a lot of times in like wood chips or sand or rocks. They're kind of dull looking, as you can see, but they're really amazing actually. This species is medicinal and edible. There's a reason why there's an asterisk there. I mean, again, it doesn't taste great, but you can eat it. It's just, you can eat it. It is just, it's not tastes good. It's mostly for medicinal purposes. And you can find these all around the world actually. And what you can see is this big bulb that's kind of in the center of the star is a chamber that releases spores when raindrops fall on it. When raindrops fall, it creates this big puff and plume, and it spreads millions of spores. It's amazing to look at. If you ever find one of these and it starts to rain, go outside and check these guys out. You'll see them puffing like crazy. It's super cool. Or you can even yourself manually puff it. You can grab a stick, or I mean, you can use your finger. It's not poisonous. It's not going to hurt you. You can puff it. You can touch it and it'll just poof, poof. It's a lot of fun. And then this one is an interesting one. Leucoprinus tricolor. These, it doesn't actually have a common name because it's not really, this is a very enigmatic one. You can find it all over North America. It's not edible, and it's not poisonous either. It just doesn't taste good. But the only place that we've ever found it is in potted plants, strangely enough. And so then that begs the question, where did it come from naturally? If we only ever find it in potted plants, where did it originally come from? We don't have an answer to that. It's very enigmatic in that sort of way. But they are very pretty in my opinion. So it's always kind of fun. I've had a couple of plants that have popped up with these guys, and they're not going to hurt the plant at all. Typically, they're actually working mutualistically, symbiotically with the plant. So it's fine. Just don't eat them. And the name of this one is going to be tough to say. So the common name is golden bolete, but I will try. The scientific name is Buchwaldoboletus sapherocephalus. And yeah, the golden bolete. Its edibility is surprisingly unknown. Some people say it's edible, some people eat it, some people don't. Some people say it gives them an upset stomach. Again, it's not lethal for sure, but it's possible that it might just be very depending on the individual, how they react. And you'll find these ones in relation to trees, like especially tree stumps, like dead trees, and in sawdust. And you can find this all alongside the entire California coast. They're very pretty. And what you can tell at the difference of these, I'd like to just point out, is if you look at the underside, where normally I think you see a lot of mushrooms with gills, the slits, in this case, they have almost a honeycomb-like structure of holes. And that's partially what defines this sort of division, this sort of class or order of boletes, is these holes on the bottom rather than gills. That's how they release their spores, a little bit differently. It's interesting in that sort of way. So you can look, if you do ever find, we have other boletes here in Southern California. If you find a mushroom with pores rather than gills, it's very likely that it's a bolete. There are other mushrooms that are not boletes that have or have pores, but not as often here in Southern California. So that's all of the various different mushrooms I wanted to share with you. Again, if you need help IDing a mushroom, I highly recommend the iNaturalist app. It's totally free. There's also a great website called Mushroom Observer. You can also reach out to the San Diego Mycological Society via Facebook, Instagram, or our email. And you can come to other, like if you want to learn more about mushrooms beyond us, there are other mushroom events and conferences. There's the NAMA, which is the North American Mycological Society, which is a big coalition of a lot of mushroom clubs all over North America. Mushroom fairs, like I said, there's the fungus fair here in February. There's also one in LA if you want something close by. But my guess is that most major cities have a mycological society of some kind. There's the Telluride Mushroom Festival, which is huge. That one's kind of, I've heard, is a party. I have not been there, but it sounds like a good time. And then every year in Wisconsin, there's the Women in Mushrooms, the Women's in Mushrooms Conference, which is also very interesting. And yeah, if you want to know more, you should definitely consider coming to one of our lectures whenever those happen again. I will try to actually convince our president to do something via Zoom, because I think that this actually works better than I expected. And that you should come to our lectures regardless. You don't even have to become a member. But membership is only $25 a year, and with the membership, you get access to our 4As, our cooking classes, our identification classes, our growing workshops, the dinners, all of that sort of stuff. And our monthly meetings, again, are in Balboa Park, Casa del Prado, room 101, at 6:30. And you can go and learn more about us from all of our social media, which is usually SDMyco, or you can come to go to our website, sdmyco.org. And if you're interested in watching that documentary, Fantastic Fungi, you can go to vimeo.com/on-demand/fantastic fungi, which is, I have this open right in the other tab. It's right here. It is an amazing documentary, and especially good for those who are just getting interested and want to learn a little bit more. It's a great primer. So with that, I guess I'll open it up to questions. I don't know. Yes.
I have one. Can you hear me?
Yes.
What is the connection now? It's very popular to take mushroom supplements to increase your immune system, particularly now during the virus. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of mushrooms that have been used for hundreds, if not thousands, of years by, especially in Chinese medicine, but also other various cultures. And the ones in particular that seem to be good for the immune system, the prime one is definitely reishi mushrooms. But turkey tail is also fairly good for your immune system, as are cordyceps. Those are the ones that I would highly recommend for. Those are the ones I'd highly recommend for the sake of improving your immune system. Are reishi, cordyceps, and turkey tail.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I have a question. When this whole thing started, I went to the pharmacy, Arcana Pharmacy on El Camino Real. Maybe you guys are familiar with the pharmacist that's there. And I was concerned about my immune system. And this is what he recommended, is this is a combination of 17 different kinds of mushrooms. And the two that you mentioned are in that, but it's called the My Community Comprehensive Immune Support. And it's these, there's a man, I guess, up in Washington who produces this. Have you ever heard of this, Matthew?
Yes. No, so I think you're referring to Paul Stamets. He is heavily featured in that documentary that I was just mentioning, by the way. And he's kind of the celebrity mycologist. If you get into the mycology world at all, you will definitely learn more about Paul Stamets. Oh, thank you. I am still sharing my screen. I will undo that. How do I unshare my screen? Does anybody know how to unshare your screen? Oh, wait, there we go. Great. So yeah, he's the celebrity mycologist, and the one caveat I will give is that there seems to be a bit of a controversy with the mushroom supplement industry is not fully regulated yet, and you're never going to get anything that's dangerous, so don't worry about that. But many of the mushroom supplements are not actually mushrooms. They are what's known as mycelium on grain. So again, the mycelium is essentially the root structure, which is the main organism, by the way. It's a little bit different than plants. Mushrooms are just the reproductive sexual body of the mushroom, of the fungus, meaning it's like the apple on the apple tree. If you pick a mushroom, it's no different than picking an apple off the tree. The main organism is still very much alive, and you're not harming the main organism, but you are potentially limiting its ability to reproduce, because that's what it's doing. It's spreading its spores. But anyways, most of the medicinal compounds in a fungus are actually found in mushrooms, and many mushroom supplement companies do produce their pills are mycelium on grain. So it's the mycelium that they're taking, and in addition, it's also the grain that they're on, meaning like oftentimes it's rice flour or something like that. So you're a lot of times not necessarily getting the full benefit of the fungus by taking these sort of supplements, because they just are not the part of the fungus that have the most amount of medicinal compounds. And unfortunately, my community is one of those that is mycelium on grain. So you're not going to be hurting yourself by taking it, but you're probably not going to be getting as much benefit as if you were to take it from a company that exclusively does it on just fruiting bodies, just the mushrooms. And obviously I can't give any sort of endorsements of specific brands, but I just recommend that when you're doing your research about mushroom supplements, that you make sure that it says made from whole fruiting bodies or mushrooms, and not mycelium on grain.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I see a question from Mara. Matthew, can you talk a little bit about how fungi are different from plants or animals? Yeah, so again, kind of how I was saying at the beginning, fungi are much more closely related to animals than they are to plants, which might seem counterintuitive just because, they grow out of the ground in that sort of way, and they don't move. But in reality, both animals and fungi are much, much older than plants, because animals and fungi evolved in the sea. They evolved in the oceans, whereas plants only evolved on land. So that was much, much later in evolutionary time. And fungi in particular were one of the very first colonizers of the land, alongside algae and bacteria. And I don't know how much you all know about what lichen are, but lichen are not an individual organism. They are a combination of organisms. It's a couple different fungi, and then either a couple different fungi, or either a cyanobacteria or an algae. And depending on which one of those it is, either way, actually, they're the photobiont, meaning they photosynthesize. And so they work together with the fungus. The fungus degrades the substrate that it's on, meaning like the rock or the bark or the wood. And the algae or the cyanobacteria, they photosynthesize, so they can generate carbs from glucose from the sunlight and the carbon dioxide in the air. And together, they are able to create this amazing sort of like superorganism, which is what a lichen is. And anyways, the reason why I bring up lichen is because they were one of the first types of creatures, I won't say organism because it's not one, creatures to inhabit the land. They were able to turn stone into soil, and which allowed then plants to evolve on the land, because before that, the land had sand through just erosion of rocks and such, but it didn't have soil. It didn't have the rich sort of nutrients and stuff like that. And actually lichen, or some lichen-like organisms, which again, it was a fungus and then either algae and bacteria, were able to create soil, which allowed a habitat for plants to evolve. So fungi are much, much older than plants, but they actually are about the same age as animals. And animals, and if you think about it, animals and fungi are similar in many ways. We both breathe oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide, whereas plants breathe CO2, carbon dioxide, and exhale oxygen. So it's the opposite. Additionally, plants generate their own energy via sunlight, photosynthesis, whereas fungi don't do that. They don't photosynthesize. They have to eat food. They have to consume food. But the difference between the way that fungi consume food versus we consume food is internal to external digestion. We do internal digestion, obviously, meaning we take the food, we put it inside of us, and we digest it inside of us. Fungi do the opposite. It's quite strange. They excrete their digestive enzymes out into their environment, and things digest externally. And then once things are digested into a kind of a soupy nutrient medium, then they suck it up. So it's very bizarre. It would be, I apologize for a little bit of the graphic analogy. It would be as if we threw up our stomach acid onto our food and let it digest on the plate, and then until it turned into a smoothie, and then you drank it. A little gross, but that's how fungi do it. Okay, there's another question from Karen. I recently heard that there are massive bodies of fungi under the ground, like a network. Can you speak to this? Yes. So that is the mycelium I was speaking of. The mycelium is, again, kind of like the root network of a mushroom, of mushrooms, but it's really kind of the opposite. Mycelium is the main organism. That is the main organism. And the mushrooms are just, again, the fruiting bodies. They're just like the apple on the apple tree. And there are these interconnected networks of mycelium that oftentimes connect plants to one another. In particular, 98% of all vascular plants have a fungal partner, mycelial partner, mycorrhizal partner, which means that there is a fungus that actually invades the root systems, almost like an infection of the roots, but they're actually helping each other because the fungus can actually obtain nutrients and moisture much more effectively than a root system by itself. But in exchange, the plant gives the fungus carbon. But what's also really cool is that the mycelial network connects plants together, and plants can actually share carbon. So let's say a baby tree that's just starting out is being shaded out by some of the larger already adult trees. And so it's not getting as much sunlight, so it's not photosynthesizing as much. The mycelial network can actually can divert carbon from the parent, essentially the parent tree that is getting a lot of the sunlight, and divert it through the mycelial network to the baby tree so that it still has a chance to continue growing. It's really amazing. They can also do stuff like signal when insects are coming. If one tree is getting attacked by insects, it can send a message through the mycelial network to other neighboring trees that insects are coming, so that those trees will then start producing volatile compounds to repel the insects. It's amazing what these mycelial networks can do. This is just the surface level of all the stuff that they have the ability to do. And the largest organism in the world by area is a fungus, and not by mass, but it's a giant mycelial network underneath a forest in Oregon. And I forget how many, I'm gonna look it up. I want to, because it's an impressive number, I want to let you know how big it is, how many acres. It is, okay, the land area of the Oregon humongous fungus is about 3.5 square miles, or 2,240 acres. And it's estimated to be about 35,000 tons. in terms of mass. So it is a big, big organism. And again, it is the largest organism by area, but also in Oregon, funnily enough, there's the other largest organism, but that one's by mass, and that is a connection and collection of aspen trees, because aspen trees are actually all one organism. When they're in a forest together, they're all interconnected. So yeah, that's also a really interesting situation. And they obviously weigh more than this mycelial network, but they're not nearly as large in area. So it's a very cool thing. Does anybody else have any questions? Any more questions? Or, I mean, about fungi in general, about the Mycological Society, anything really.
You can ask questions either out loud or via chat, if you have any more.
Okay, we have another one from Mara and another one from Karen. Okay, first I'm going to do Mara. What does it mean when we inoculate soil? My landscaper recommended this where we had a tree dying from a big fungus growing at the base. Oh, yeah, that's probably the Dyer's polypore. We've had one of those as well. Was it kind of, Mara, was it kind of fan shaped? Was it hard and kind of large and fan shaped rather than sort of the classic mushroom capstock? Yes, okay, I was right. So yeah, that was probably the Dyer's polypore. That's really interesting. It's a really interesting mushroom. It's very pretty when it's fresh. And additionally, it's oftentimes used for dyeing, as in D-Y-I or D-Y-E, like to dye fabrics, because it can create all of these amazing colors when dried. That's another thing that the Mycological Society does, by the way. We also teach you how to use fungi to make artwork or dye fabrics and such. I forgot to add that to the presentation. But the Dyer's polypore, unfortunately, I think your landscaper is a little bit misinformed, from my opinion. Unfortunately, if the mushroom has already fruited, there's already a mushroom, the Dyer's polypore, it means that the tree is already dying. It's already dying, and it's a bit too late at that point. The Dyer's polypore only really ever comes around when the tree's already on its deathbed. It's not the thing that necessarily kills it. It's more of just an indicator that the tree is dying. So, I mean, I guess I have technically heard of trees recovering afterwards, but it's unlikely. Oh, I see that you removed the tree. So I'm assuming, though, what he means by inoculating the soil, that seems a little bit different to me. Inoculating the soil, to me, would make me think of, like, a lot of times vineyards do this. They inoculate, like, the rootstock with mycelium in order to create this sort of mycorrhizal connection I was talking about, because it improves the health and the vitality of these plants. It allows them to take up more nutrients and more water, as well as fend off against pathogens much more easily with a mycorrhizal partner. So oftentimes vineyards will, before they plant rootstock, they'll dip the rootstock in a mycelium inoculation culture that allows for this partner to grow with it. Yeah, so that's something that happens oftentimes. And then, okay, Karen had another question. How did you get interested in mushrooms? That's a great question. I honestly don't know how to tell you that, how to give you an answer to this question in a fulfilling way. I have always just kind of been interested in mushrooms, even since I was a kid. I kind of always knew that when I was growing up, mushrooms were different than plants. I obviously couldn't articulate it in any sort of way back then. But when I was, growing up, it rained so infrequently, there weren't a ton of mushrooms here. When a mushroom would pop up, I'd be like, huh, that's weird. That's different. What is that? Like, why is it like spongy and soft? And why does it only come after rains? All these other plants are here all the time. What does this? It's not green. Smells different. you know, all of these sort of things. And it was only once I started getting interested in just biology more generally that I then was like, okay, well, I want to learn a little bit more about the biology of mushrooms. And then I started to learn a little bit. And then I was like, wow, this is fascinating. They're totally different and completely crazy. Like there's so much about them. And then I've just kind of perpetuated it myself over time, how I've learned and enjoyed learning about mushrooms. And now I'm going to go get a PhD in it. So yeah, let's see. Then we have one from Lisa. What is the medium in which commercial mushrooms are grown? Are there any countries to avoid because of unsanitary growing practices? No. Okay, so misconception, actually. I think that there are oftentimes, there's a misconception that, you know, whatever, you don't want Chinese-based mushrooms or Chinese-based medicinal supplements from mushrooms and stuff like that. I actually completely disagree. From my knowledge, China actually has the highest quality mushrooms pretty much of anywhere, because mushrooms have been such a big, I actually consider doing my PhD in mycology in China, because they have, I mean, mushrooms have been part of Chinese culture for hundreds to potentially thousands of years. They really know what they're doing. They have industrial scale mushroom farms like nothing that is here in the US. It's insane. You like fully automated, like incredibly sterile, super clean, like it's crazy the kind of stuff that they have there. It's very well done. And it puts everything that we do in the United States to shame regarding to mushrooms. But I don't know of any other countries that you necessarily want to avoid mushrooms in. I've not heard of any specifically. I mean, obviously, never hurts to look into the mushroom, the company that's supplying it, just to see. But I mean, I guess that goes for any sort of food produce or medicinal supplement produce. You just should look into the things that you're going to be putting in your body. Is my opinion. But the medium on what mushrooms, to answer your first question, the medium that mushrooms are grown on completely depends on the type of mushroom. Like if you're doing those oyster mushrooms, you typically do that on straw, pasteurized straw. But if you're doing the white button mushrooms, that is more on a kind of like a rich dirt. Sometimes a little bit of like cow dung is introduced in there as well. Don't worry, it's fine. It's completely sanitary. They completely pasteurize it, so there's nothing living in there, and it's very nutrient rich. And then the mushroom converts everything to something that's edible, and then they clean it. So don't worry about that. But yeah, different mushrooms require completely different growing mediums. Yeah, it's hard to give a generalization about that. But let's see. Oh, okay. Melinda has a question. What are your thoughts on microdosing mushrooms? I'm assuming you mean psychedelic mushrooms as opposed to like medicinal mushrooms. Or I mean, psychedelic mushrooms can be medicinal as well, in my opinion. But I mean, obviously it is not legal, so I cannot advocate for that. Nor can I really say that the evidence is there yet that the evidence is really there to support that it truly does work and it's not just necessarily placebo effect. I would say, especially at microdosing levels, if you know what you have is for real psychedelic mushrooms, there's very little chance that you're going to be doing yourself any sort of serious harm by doing it, but you won't necessarily be getting a lot of benefit. I have known of people who have benefited from doing it supposedly, but obviously I can't rule out the fact that it was placebo effect. I think that there are some ongoing trials right now with placebo-controlled, double-blind studies, and I'm really interested to see what comes out of those. But at the moment, I just don't think that there's quite enough evidence to suggest it yet. I think that there's more evidence to suggest some of the more medicinal mushrooms for if you're trying to relieve anxiety or other things at the moment. Granted, now full dose of psychedelics under proper like medicinal therapy sessions with a professional have been shown to be effective at treating anxiety, depression, PTSD, but with a medical professional, not just doing it on your own at your house with your buddy. Like, that's a completely different context. So yes. Okay. I hope that answered that question. Candace has a question. Some mushrooms can't be cultivated like truffles or chanterelles. Is that a question or is that just a statement? I mean,
Is that true? And are there attempts being made to cultivate them?
oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, truffles can't be cultivated exactly, but you can essentially they like to grow on oak trees or under the ground by oak trees. They associate with oak trees. So what you can do a lot of times, people who cultivate truffles is they'll make an oak like grove, and you can seed the area with spores. You can inoculate the area with truffle spores, and in hopes that you create truffles, but it's not going to be the same sort of way in like an automated fashion where you can, also they're underground, so you can't see them. So you have to use a truffle dog. Truffle pigs are very rarely used anymore, because the problem with the way that pigs worked in the past is that pigs would want to eat the truffle. So you would have to, they'd run after the truffle, and then you'd have to wrangle them away as soon as they found it. Whereas now dogs, you could train them to smell truffles, and then you can give them a treat afterwards. That's, a lot less expensive, because truffles are very expensive. You can give them a treat, and the dogs are perfectly happy with the treat, but you get to have the precious truffle. So truffle pigs aren't really a thing very much anymore, but dogs are. So no matter what, you're still going to have to go out and do with the dog, but you can semi-cultivate them by seeding an oak grove. And chanterelles, yeah, I've never heard of cultivation of chanterelles. I wish I could comment more on why they're difficult. I mean, I know that they also associate with trees, so that's part of it. But I don't know exactly where, like, the status of trying to get that to happen, or if there are a similar situation with truffles where you can kind of seed a grove of trees. So I apologize, I don't know as much about chanterelles in that way, but they are delicious and I love them. When I lived in the Pacific Northwest, I would go foraging for them, and that was always delicious. Jill has a question. Is it any oak tree a host for, or, okay. Yes, so oak trees, we do have some truffles here, but not ones you really want to eat. So truffles are like an underground mushroom, basically, and they're not poisonous again, and they don't even necessarily taste bad. They just taste really bland here. The kind of truffles that we get here in Southern California are not really anything to gawk about. They're just kind of not worth your time, in my opinion. So we do have them, but it's just not. It's nothing that you really want to eat.
Are there more questions? I guess not. Thank you so very, very much, Matthew. It's been wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you all for having me.
Interesting.
I want to go and hunt mushrooms.
Yeah, I mean, next time that we do a foray, well, you'll have to become a member if you want to come with us on a foray. But again, I think it's a fairly reasonable price, $25 for an entire year. But you can always actually come to me about that. I'm the membership officer, so I'm the one who would sign you up to become a member. Yeah, I mean, you can always, if you do go out and hunt mushrooms, please do not eat anything without an expert IDing it. Please don't. I cannot emphasize that enough. Again, very few of them, especially here in Southern California, will be lethal. But I still don't want you to end up in the hospital because you're having to get your stomach pumped because you're throwing up profusely. Like, it's not going to kill you, but you know, you're not going to have a good time. Oh, I see Piper said, will you send us a link to the movie Fantastic Fungi? Yes, I will. I'll send it right there in the chat. Right there. But you can also just Google Fantastic Fungi documentary, or just Fantastic Fungi even. It'll come up. But I did just send the link in the chat. And I definitely recommend that as well. As a reminder also, I highly recommend on your phone, if you have a smartphone, to get the app iNaturalist. If you don't already have it, because it's great for plants and animals as well, not just fungi. But it's free and it's a lot of fun. You just take pictures of things all day when you're out on your walks, and then when you come back home, you can have it try to identify the stuff for you. Or I mean, you can do it while you're out on the walk too, but I always prefer to do it when I get home, because then you know, I'm enjoying myself on the walk itself.
Well, thanks a lot, and wonderful program. And maybe tomorrow's picture of the day will have some fungi in it. That might be a task. People can go out and see if they can find anything. And I think this has worked very well, Matthew. I think you should feel quite confident doing this for other groups or other organizations or something. I think it's been a real success. So everybody, I'm going to say goodbye for now. And again, thank our speaker and thank Carol for arranging it and the rest of the program committee for arranging it. Yay!
Thank you all for having me.
All right, I'm going to end the meeting here.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.